Have you ever looked around the room, maybe at your own family, and suddenly felt invisible? Like all those years you spent working, giving, caring, somehow don't count anymore? You're not alone. Too many older adults, good, kind people, are hearing hurtful words from their own children. You're a burden. We can't take care of you anymore. Or worse, they don't say it at all. They just show it in their tone, their eyes, their distance. And let me tell you something. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you've lost your worth. You are not a burden. You are the roots of the very tree your kids are sitting under. And if they've forgotten that, it's time they remember. So let's talk about what to do if your kids have made you feel like you're in the way. Not with revenge, not with yelling, but with quiet strength, sharp clarity, and a powerful plan. You're going to live in a way that makes them realize exactly who they've taken for granted and what they lost when they stopped treating you with respect. Now I want you to breathe with me. Slow, steady. This isn't about being bitter. This is about being better. Because when someone shows you you're not valued, the most powerful thing you can do is stop handing them your energy. Let's start with this. If they think you're a burden, then stop giving. Stop fixing. Stop funding. Stop holding their world together while yours is unraveling. I've talked to so many folks, mothers, fathers, grandparents, who quietly pay their kids rent, watch their grandkids every day, lend thousands of dollars and never see it back, cook meals, help with errands. And then one day, they're told, "You're too much." It's heartbreaking. But here's the truth. When you stop doing everything for everyone, two things happen. First, they learn how much you were really doing. Second, you get your power back. I'm not saying you should become cold, but if your children have made you feel like a weight in their lives, it's time to lovingly release them from your wallet, your schedule, and your shoulders. You're not their safety net anymore. They're adults. Let them act like it. Next, I want you to start building something just for you. That might sound strange, especially if your whole life has been about taking care of others. But you matter, and it's time you lived like it. Have you always loved gardening? Get your hands back in the soil? Always wanted to travel, even just short day trips? Start planning. Maybe you've got a sewing machine gathering dust, or a recipe box that deserves to be opened again. Whatever it is, build your own routine, your own joy. Because here's the magic. When you stop orbiting around people who don't see your light, you start shining brighter. You become someone who isn't dependent, but someone who's deeply fulfilled. And that's powerful. That's attractive. That's unforgettable. And let's talk about space. If you're living with your kids and they treat you like an inconvenience, it may be time to rethink that setup. I know, it's not easy. Rent is high. Options are limited. But sometimes peace is worth more than square footage. I once knew a woman, Ruth, who lived with her daughter and son-in-law after her husband passed. She cooked, cleaned, even picked up the grandkids from school. One day, her son-in-law snapped at her over something small and said, "Maybe it's time you got your own place." That night, Ruth quietly packed a bag and moved in with a friend from church temporarily. Her daughter called 2 days later, panicking about dinner and school pickups. But Ruth didn't come running. She let them feel the silence. And when she eventually did return, it was with a lease signed for a little senior apartment and a clear boundary. I'm not your maid, and I'm not your punching bag. Ruth, she never looked back. And her daughter? She never took her mother for granted again. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave the room and let people feel your absence. Now I know you might be thinking, but I don't want to hurt them. I just want peace. and you deserve that. But peace doesn't come from pleasing people who treat you poorly. It comes from standing up quietly and clearly and saying, "No more." You've given your whole life. You've earned rest, respect, and a space of your own, physically and emotionally. If they can't give you that, then you give it to yourself. Remember, you are not a burden. You are a blessing. And blessings don't beg to be seen. They simply stop showing up for those who don't see them. You see, there's a difference between love and obligation. Real love isn't laced with guilt trips or rolled eyes. It doesn't keep score or make you feel small for needing help. And if your kids have confused love with control, it's time to correct that, for your sake and theirs. One of the most powerful things you can do as you get older is to protect your peace. Not just your physical health or financial security, but your emotional space. And that starts by setting real, firm boundaries. Let me tell you something. Boundaries aren't walls. They're fences with gates. You decide who gets in. You decide who stays. And just because someone shares your last name doesn't mean they have unlimited access to your heart or your bank account. If you've been saying yes out of guilt, it's time to learn the strength of a gentle no. No, I won't be watching the grandkids every weekend. No, I won't be covering your car payment this month. No, I won't tolerate being disrespected in my own home. Saying no doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear. It's how people learn to treat you with the dignity you deserve. Now, I know that's easier said than done, especially if you're someone who's always been the peacemaker, the one holding everyone together. But let me ask you something. Who holds you? Because the truth is, the longer you keep pouring from your cup, the emptier you'll get. And no one, even the people you love the most, will stop you from burning out unless you stop yourself first. So, here's what I want you to do today. I want you to take inventory, not of your pantry or your pills, but of your energy. Where does your time go? Who are you constantly worrying about? What situations leave you feeling drained, invisible, or used? Write them down, and then ask yourself, what am I getting back? Is this love, or is this obligation? It's okay to pull back. It's okay to stop carrying other people's weight, especially when they're the ones who put it on your back and then called you slow for not walking faster. Your kids may not even realize how much you do. That's the thing about being dependable. It becomes invisible until one day you stop, and then everything starts falling apart. And in that silence, they hear the truth. I remember one gentleman, Robert. He came up to me after a community talk I gave and said, "I stopped paying for my son's bills last year. He hasn't spoken to me since." I asked him, "Was he speaking to you before, or just thanking you when the money came through?" Robert paused and then said, "No, just texts when rent was due. Nothing more." That silence? It wasn't punishment. It was freedom. Because now Robert is saving for his own travel plans. He's joined a woodworking group, finally fixed that creaky porch swing his wife always loved. And the funny thing, a few months later, his son called, not for money, but just to talk, maybe for the first time in years. And Robert? He picked up the phone with peace in his voice, not pressure in his chest. Sometimes when you stop being the bank, you finally become the parent again. You see, this chapter of life, your 60s, 70s, and beyond, it isn't the end of the book. It's a whole new volume. And it deserves to be filled with peace, purpose, and people who see your value without needing to be reminded. You don't need to earn your place in your own family. You've already paid your dues, raised your children, worked hard, showed up, made sacrifices. If they can't treat you with respect, then maybe it's time to stop showing up in ways that make it easy for them to forget what you've done. This doesn't mean you stop loving them. Love is constant, but access is earned. There's a big difference between loving someone and allowing them to mistreat you. You can pray for them, wish them well, and still keep your distance until they learn how to speak to you with kindness. Until they remember who you are. Not just a parent or a grandparent, but a person. A whole, complex, beautiful person who deserves peace, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Now, I want you to think about something. What would your life look like if you started pouring all the energy you've been giving away back into yourself? What if instead of budgeting for their emergencies, you saved for your own joys? What if instead of rearranging your life around their needs, you rearranged your furniture, painted your walls, or picked up that hobby you always said you'd try? It's not selfish. It's essential. You deserve a life that makes you smile when you wake up. A life where you are seen, heard, and appreciated, not just tolerated. You've spent decades building others up. Now it's time to build something for yourself. And here's the part that may surprise you. When your kids start seeing you thrive on your own terms, when they see you glowing with confidence, drawing healthy lines, making choices for your own joy, something shifts. Suddenly, you're not the burden anymore. You're the blueprint. You become an example of what aging with grace, strength, and dignity looks like. You stop being their silent support system and start being a mirror. A reminder that you were never just there to serve them. You're someone to be respected. And if they still don't get it, that's okay. Sometimes regret is the only teacher that sticks. And if your absence, your boundaries, become the lesson they needed to grow up, then maybe, just maybe, your quiet courage will do more for them than all the years of sacrifice ever could. There's a certain peace that comes with choosing yourself. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't need a big announcement. It's quiet, but it's powerful. And when you finally make that choice, when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who should have seen it from the beginning, you begin to bloom in a whole new way. Let me say this as clearly as I can. You don't need to wait for permission to reclaim your life. You don't need to wait for your kids to apologize before you start living again. If they said you were a burden and treated you like one, that's on them. But how you carry yourself now, that's on you. So, let me ask you, what are you doing today for you? Are you taking a walk just to feel the sun on your face? Are you reading something that makes you think, or laugh, or feel something again? Have you taken yourself out for lunch lately? Not to run errands, not to babysit grandkids, but just because you deserve a warm meal and a quiet corner. These are small acts, but they're acts of power. Every time you choose yourself, even in the smallest ways, you remind the world that you matter. And listen, I know some days feel heavy. You may look around and wonder, after all I've done, how did we get here? That question hurts. And it's okay to grieve the version of your family you hoped for. The closeness, the gratitude, the kindness. If your kids chose distance or disrespect, that's not something you caused. That's something they'll have to live with and learn from. But you still have time. You still have mornings to wake up with hope, meals to enjoy without criticism, moments to laugh so hard you forget what year it is. You still have the power to shape this next chapter into something beautiful. And let me tell you something else. The people who truly see your worth, they're still out there. You are not too old to make new friends. You are not too late to find love, or purpose, or joy. You are not done. And you don't need anyone's approval to begin again. There's a community waiting for you. Whether it's your local senior center, a church group, a gardening club, or an online space like this one, you are not alone. You've just spent too long surrounded by people who stopped clapping for you. So now, it's time to find people who will. Because here's what I know to be true. When you reclaim your dignity, others notice. Maybe not right away. Maybe your kids will keep scoffing or ignoring your calls or making snide comments to relatives. But one day, when their internet stops working, when the bills pile up, when the fridge is empty, and the person they used to rely on is no longer at their beck and call, they'll remember. They'll remember who kept the lights on, who paid the bills, who helped raise their children, who showed up without needing to be asked, who gave and gave and gave. And when the silence finally hits them, it will sound a lot like regret. Now, will they admit it? Maybe, maybe not. That's not your concern anymore, because you've moved on. You're not living for validation. You're living for peace, for freedom, for yourself. And if they ever do come back, not with guilt or manipulation, but with real humility, real words, and real change, that's up to you to decide. You get to set the terms now. You get to choose what your relationship looks like from here on out. But you never, ever have to go back to being anyone's doormat. You've worked too hard to shrink for people who can't handle your strength. So keep building your new life, one day at a time. Start that morning routine that makes you feel grounded. Cook that dish you've been craving. Write that letter to your younger self, the one who always put everyone else first. Tell her thank you and let her know you're finally putting her needs first now. And to anyone watching this right now, nodding along with tears in their eyes or fire in their belly, I see you. I hear you. And I want to say this from the bottom of my heart. You are not alone. You're not crazy. You're not selfish. You're finally seeing the truth. And that takes courage. So, if this message has touched something in you, share your story in the comments. Let this be a space where we lift each other up, where no elder ever feels invisible or unworthy again. If this helped you, hit that like button so we know we're building something meaningful here. And don't forget to subscribe to Strong Elderly Life, because this channel is your place, your voice, and your home for wisdom, strength, and resilience. Here's to living boldly. Here's to setting boundaries. Here's to choosing peace, even when it's hard. And most of all, here's to reminding the world that we are not burdens. We are the backbone of generations. We are the storytellers. We are the strong. And we are just getting started.